My name is Raymond Lotta, and we're here for a very special program, and that is Heroism for Our Times, Free Iran's Political Prisoners, an Afternoon of Solidarity and Resistance. I'm a spokesperson for Revolution Books. I'm part of the International Emergency Campaign to free Iran's political prisoners, and I am a writer for Revcom.us and an advocate for the new communism developed by Baba Avakian. We're here at Revolution Books in Harlem and Berkeley. We're here by live stream from other cities in the country and from other parts of the world to let it be known that we stand with our courageous sisters and brothers who are held in political captivity in the dungeons of Iran, not for any crime, but for bravely and heroically opposing the brutal and illegitimate regime that is the Islamic Republic of Iran. We are here to raise our voices and to demand their freedom now. And I just want to say that as we are bringing people in from around the country and from around the world, and we have a program that's going to combine presentations with video, with music, I have to say, quite frankly, that this is a very complicated undertaking, and it's something new for us here at Revolution Books. We've had to speed up the learning curve, and we've learned a lot in a short time about doing a program like this, but I cannot guarantee there won't be some glitches, some hiccups, and some interruptions. And what I want to say to you about that is don't panic. We will solve the problem. But I also want, in addition to asking for your understanding, to ask for your involvement, for those who have technical skills, video, music, to let us know, the International Emergency Committee and Revolution Books. We need your involvement, and we need both your determination to join with this struggle and to bring your expertise, in this case, technical. So that's all part of the picture of building a campaign like this, and it's how we have to function here at Revolution Books and what it means to build the struggle to change the world. So with that, I want to bring to the stage Outer National. Outer National is a revolutionary internationalist, one-of-a-kind, genre-straddling rock band. Outer National.
It's an honor to be here. The political prisoners in Iran serve as an inspiration, not only for all of those like us who are aware of this struggle, but for all those people out there who need to find that there's something bigger than themselves to live for, to fight for, and to give their lives for. Hello to all our friends around the world who are watching on the stream. Danger raging around us, overwhelming forces of darkness assail. Still in the fight, see advancing before us. Red flag of liberty that yet shall prevail. Forward, you fighters, freedom awaits you. Over the world, on the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. March, march, you toilers, and the world shall be free. And hunger are calling. Shall we be silent to the sorrow and woe? Out in the streets, see our comrades are falling. Up then united and we'll conquer the foe. Forward, you fighters, freedom awaits you. Over the world, on the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. March, march, you toilers, and the world shall be free. Off with the crowns of the tyrants of favor. Down in the dust with the prince and the peer. Strike off your chains, sons and daughters of labor. Wake all humanity, bring victory near. Forward, you fighters, freedom awaits you. Over the world, on the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. March, march, you toilers, and the world shall be free. Forward, you fighters, freedom awaits you. Over the world, on the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. March, march, you toilers, and the world shall be free. March, march, you toilers, and the world shall be free. March, march, you toilers, and the world shall be free.
All right, let's give Outer National another round of applause. A very fitting and soaring introduction to tonight's program for those in Europe, for today's program afternoon on the East Coast and on the West Coast of the United States. Outer National was joined for today's performance by Luis. So want to thank you for coming out for the special occasion. I want people to look at this picture. It's an enlargement of the ad that appeared in the New York Review of Books in August. Take a look at that picture. The camera is panning on it now. And who are these women and men at the top? They are among the imprisoned writers and poets, labor and women's rights activists, a beloved human rights lawyer, progressives and revolutionaries. Many are now facing long jail sentences and the lash of a whip. Yes, whippings are part of the punishment meted out by the Islamic Republic of Iran. But these political prisoners are not bowing to their captors. They are fierce in their determination and resistance. And we are here to celebrate them and to step up the battle to free them. Our aim tonight is for people to come away from this program with deeper understanding of the stakes of this battle and with greater determination to win it. Yes, win their freedom. Today's program is co-sponsored by Revolution Books, the political, intellectual, and cultural center of a movement for an actual revolution, and the International Emergency Campaign to free Iran's political prisoners. And I want to say a few words about the Emergency Campaign, which, along with Revolution Books, is hosting and sponsoring this program. The Emergency Campaign was formed in the U.S. in late 2020 in response to a call from supporters, friends, and families of Iran's political prisoners, and the Burn the Cage, Free the Birds movement in Europe. Burn the Cage, Free the Birds was sparked by a new wave of repression and arrests targeting wide swaths of Iranian society carried out by the Islamic Republic of Iran in October 2020. Here in the U.S., Carol Downer and Dolly Veal took up this campaign and put it on an emergency footing. And in March of this year, an emergency appeal was issued. The lives of Iran's political prisoners hang in the balance. We must act. That is the statement. That is the appeal. That is what appeared in the New York Review of Books in August of this year. And the appeal has been signed by former political prisoners in Iran, relatives of current political prisoners, and prominent voices of conscience, including Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, Gloria Steinem, Jody Williams, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, writer Ariel Dorfman, scholars Gayatri Spivak and Judith Butler, and it has been signed by more than 2,500 others. Right here and now, I want to thank and recognize the tireless work and the financial support of Iranians around the world who helped make the publication of this ad possible. Many of them are watching today's live stream, and we salute you. This campaign is having an impact. It is shining a light on the cause of these prisoners. It's drawing forward people from around the world, and it is giving heart to the political prisoners in Iran. But things have taken a menacing turn. In late August, heavy sentences were handed down to several of the prisoners, including some whose pictures are here on this easel. Let me be clear. This is not a symbolic campaign. We are building and bringing forward international support, solidarity, and action to bear on what is a two-sided battle in Iran. The savage repression that is launched by the regime in response to growing resistance, and the struggle to meet and defeat this repression. Let me be clear. We refuse to accept the imprisonment of our Iranian sisters and brothers. We may speak different languages, but ours is a unified voice of international solidarity and resistance. And with that, I want to introduce our first speaker. That is Larry Everest. Larry is a writer for Revcom.us. He is the author of the book Oil, Power, and Empire, and he has been very active helping to pull together this program, helping to organize a press conference that was held outside the UN earlier this week, and one of our other speakers was part of that effort at the UN press conference. And Larry has been a very important figure in the International Emergency Campaign, and he is going to give a background talk on the relevant history of Iran and U.S. Relations with Iran to help put this battle in context. So I bring Larry to the stage.
Thank you, Raymond, and I want to thank everyone who's here, everyone who's watching around the world, and everyone who's helped advance the campaign that Raymond described. There's a whole history here between the U.S. and Iran that most people in this country have no idea about, and they need to. It's a history of domination and oppression by U.S. imperialism that's had a profound impact on events, on the lives of the Iranian people, and is shaping developments to this day. Iran used to be known as Persia, an area, a country with a very long, rich history. It's situated right in the heart of the Middle East, which for centuries has been a battleground of different empires because of its location, because of the trade routes that ran through, and most recently because of oil. For over 100 years now, Iran has been dominated by imperialism. The British were the first to get their claws into the country in the early 1900s. They took control of Iran's oil for a song. They exploited it for their own imperialist interests, not the interest of the nation of Iran or the Iranian people. They reaped 85% of the profits and left most Iranians in dire and bitter poverty. Following World War II in the late 1940s and early 1950s, a mass nationalist movement arose headed by then Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, and it nationalized the Iranian oil industry, took control of it in order to use it to develop Iran's industry and so on and so forth. This was a real threat to the imperialists, and they reacted with fury. The CIA organized a coup backed by the British, which in 1953 violently overthrew Mossadegh, crushed this movement that had arisen, put a fascist monarch, the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, on the throne, and consolidated the U.S.'s hold on this strategically very critical country. The cost of this to the people of Iran was horrific. The imperialists developed Iran's economy for their interests, mainly focused around oil, a small enclave of advanced development in this whole sea of feudalism, traditional small production, and massive poverty. I was in Iran in 1979 and 1980, shortly after the revolution. I went to Kurdistan, in a province in the west. It looked like it was in the mid-1800s. I mean, it's very impoverished. Same with the countryside in the south of Iran. Meanwhile, the Shah was spending billions of dollars building a police state in Iran and a very advanced military force, which the U.S. used together with the State of Israel to defend its interests in the Middle East, as well as to confront the Soviet Union. During these 25 years the Shah reigned, thousands and thousands were jailed, tortured, murdered. When I was there, people told me stories of whole families being decimated by the hated secret police trained by the U.S., the Savak, or stories of parents being tortured in front of their children. The Shah's repression, this repression was largely targeting the progressive forces, the radicals, the communists, the revolutionaries. And this repression, plus the other actions the Shah and the imperialists took, ended up strengthening the theocratic fundamentalist wing of Iran's religious establishment, people like Ayatollah Khomeini. In 1977, as every other U.S. president since '53 had done, Jimmy Carter invited the Shah to the Washington, D.C. in December and toasted him as an island of stability in this volatile region. Weeks later, protests began in Iran that snowballed into a torrent of revolution. The Shah burned 400 people to death at the Rex Theater in Abadan in August. They murdered thousands of people on Black Friday in September. This did not stop the revolution. It fueled the revolution. By December 1978, 10 million Iranians were in the street on one day, the protests of Ashura. That's equivalent to what, 80 million people in this country going out on one day? I got a sense of this when I went to Iran. Walking through Tehran, it was like a wave of revolution had gone through the whole city and left graffiti on every building as high as you could reach, just to give you a sense of the massive character of this revolution. By February 1979, the Shah was gone and his regime was overthrown. This was a revolution that drew in people from all walks of life and many different political forces, including revolutionaries, including different sorts of leftists and so on, who contributed to the defeat of the Shah. But it was Ayatollah Khomeini and the Islamic fundamentalist theocrats that ended up taking power. And they were violent and repressive from the very beginning. One of the very first things they did was issue a declaration that women had to wear the hijab, the scarf, the covering, head covering. And they attacked women who courageously went out and protest. You see women in Afghanistan doing some similar things now against the forced veiling on International Women's Day, March 8, 1979. I was at a protest for press freedom to keep a left magazine, Ayn Dagan, open in August. And this was violently attacked by the forces of the regime, the Hezbollah. That's where that got its start. With bricks, with rocks, with pipes. People were killed. When I was there the next year, I saw planes provided by the United States firing machine guns on the positions of Kurdish freedom fighters there. This repression is something that's continued to this day, and this is something the other speakers are going to give you a very living sense of. Since 1979, the United States and Iran have sharply clashed. The U.S. encouraged Saddam Hussein to launch an 8-year war against Iran and helped arm and fuel that. There was open consideration of all-out war against Iran under George W. Bush. For decades, the U.S. has sanctioned Iran in various ways, especially in the last decade, causing massive suffering. Sometimes the U.S. tried to bring the Islamic Republic under its wings. At other times it tried to organize regime change, overthrow the Islamic Republic. For its part, the Islamic Republic fought back in different ways, but also worked with and negotiated with the imperialists, and most fundamentally never broke with global imperialism. They're simply seeking a different place within it. This history has been distorted, lied about, censored, whitewashed, and especially ignored in this country in particular, and it's critical for millions of people to understand it in order to fight for a better world and to stop the crimes that are being carried out. I really encourage people to go to revcom.us, Revolution, the website, where you can find things like the excerpt from Baba Vakian's memoir, From Ike to Mao and Beyond. It's called It's Not Our Embassy. This is a speech Baba Vakian, a great speech Baba Vakian gave in 1979 after the pro-Khomeini students took over the U.S. Embassy. It's not our embassy, he said, boldly and straight out. You can find things like the American Crime Series, which has an installment on the 1953 coup I mentioned, one on the 1988 shoot-down of Iran Air Flight 260, murdering 260 people, and much more. And right here at Revolution Books is a tremendous resource. There are printouts back in the back that people can get. There's a series of books out there about Iran. You can, you know, and Baba Vakian's memoir that I mentioned is here. Again, this is vital information to show that the United States is not a force for good in the world, and that we need to think about humanity first, not America first. Thank you.
In light of Larry's comments, his talk, I want to read from the emergency appeal, the statement that appeared in the New York Review of Books, titled, "The Lives of Iran's Political Prisoners Hang in the Balance. We Must Act Now." The statement concludes by saying this: "The governments of the U.S. and Iran act from their national interest. And in this interest, we, the people of the U.S. and Iran, along with the people of the world, have our shared interests as part of getting to a better world, to unite, to defend the political prisoners of Iran. And in the U.S., we have a special responsibility to unite very broadly against this vile repression by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and to actively oppose any war moves by the U.S. government that would bring even more unbearable suffering to the people of Iran. We demand of the Islamic Republic of Iran, free all political prisoners now. We say to the U.S. government, no threats or war moves against Iran. Lift U.S. sanctions." That is from the emergency appeal that appeared in the New York Review of Books. Now, one of the more prominent signers of this appeal is the internationally acclaimed Chilean, Argentine, American novelist, poet, essayist, Ariel Dorfman. Ariel has been very active in this campaign. He has issued a statement of solidarity that played a very critical role in drawing attention to this effort. And Ariel, who teaches at Duke University, has wonderfully put together an audio message for our afternoon event. And we are going to play that message that he recorded yesterday. It's quite moving, and I'm going to let him tell you about it.
So this is for my dear friends whom I have not met personally, but whom I know about, and who are in the Iranian prisons and very unjustly serving sentences for exercising their freedom of speech and their freedom to be free, I guess. So what I wanted to do is, because I do believe that words do carry through prison walls and from country to country and from poet to those who listen. I just wanted to send you this message, which comes from my latest novella that I just published this week called The Compensation Bureau. Just to explain the context of this, one of the guardians of the universe, it's a science fiction novel, so one of the guardians of the universe, sort of guardian angel, has fallen in love with a woman who is dying because of her fight for and her struggle for human rights, and especially for the forests. And her name is Alba Janah, Jannah, Alba Janah. And this is what he hears from her as he watches her life ebbing away. "They can kill me, but they cannot kill my love." Those were the first words I ever heard from the waterfall of her throat. "They can kill me, but they cannot kill my love." I expected to find bitterness as that woman died, that the hatred towards her enemies would be endless. Not that she forgave them, no. Not that she was ready to forget what they had done, no. It was that she had chosen to turn from the anguish that was besieging her. She had chosen to look through a crack in the wall of the shack where they had imprisoned her broken body, left it to bleed into nothingness. I saw her crawl to that slight opening in the wall, heard her think, "This is what I want to see at the end. This is what I want to take with me as I leave. I will not spend my last moments on earth filled with terror." She saw the plants. She saw a ray of sun. She remembered how rain had come down in a garden. She heard the plants asking to be gathered from the ground. And she knew that nothing ever dies. Nothing ever really dies. She thinks, "They will cast me into the ocean and I will baffle them by becoming food for fish and swim into some child's mouth and fuel her as she skips and learns and laughs." She thinks, "They will throw me into some ditch and I will escape their rage by welcoming the worms as they churn me into mud." She thinks, "They will leave me in the desert to be eaten by jackals and I will flow into the energy of every animal that roams the sands." She thinks, "They will bury me in a garden and the birds will peck at me and I will take flight with them and be blessed by their droppings as I return to earth yet again." The garden, it does not abandon her in her hour of need. So this is the excerpt from the Compensation Bureau. And the reason why I thought of it was because, especially for you, my friends, is because it was inspired in great part by my readings in Persian literature, in Rumi and Sufi poems, and other things I've read translated from the Farsi. And I thought that this is the way to send you these words, which, as we know, they cross prison walls, and they cross from country to country, and they cross from my mouth and my mind and my love to you, and I send you with these words my solidarity, my certainty that you will prevail against the forces that have you imprisoned but cannot control and silence your voices.
Let's express our appreciation for Ariel with another round of applause here. That was as stirring as it was poignant. I want to thank Ariel for providing us with that for today's program. Our next speaker is a very special guest, and she's going to be speaking to us live from Germany. And her name is Mariam Claren. And Mariam is the daughter of political prisoner and German-Iranian dual national Nahid Tagavi. And Mariam is going to tell us about the life and dedication of her mom. And Mariam has been devoting just about all of her waking hours and energy to the battle to free her mother from the dungeons of Iran and to promote the cause for the freedom of all Iran's political prisoners. Mariam has been featured in international media, The Guardian, other journals where she's been interviewed. And she has really been a major spark plug of this campaign. And I'm really, really very happy to introduce Mariam to all of you here at Revolution Books in Harlem and in Berkeley, and to the international audience. So, Mariam, how are you?
Hi, guys.
So,
Hi, Raymond.
you're coming in loud and clear, and I give the stage to you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. Thank you to everybody who's watching. As Raymond said, my name is Mariam Claren, and my mother, Nahid Tagavi, is a political prisoner in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Nahid is a left-minded woman rights activist. Therefore, she is imprisoned. She was arrested in the capital city of Iran, in Tehran, on October 16, 2020, by the intelligence branch of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are something like the deep state in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they control most of the wings in Iran, like the military, like the police, like the intelligence forces, and they only report to the supreme leader. So they have no accountability anywhere. And they arrested her and they brought her to the notorious Evin prison. The Evin prison in Tehran is very famous for mass executions, for torture. That was one of the places where in the 80s, thousands of political prisoners were killed. And there they brought her to the isolation section called 2A, and she spent 194 days in solitary confinement. And when I say solitary confinement, it's really solitary confinement. The cells are very tiny. There is no bed in a cell. There is no pillow in a cell. The prisoners are monitored 24/7 by cameras. But every time they leave their cells for interrogation or something, they are blindfolded, so they don't see what's happening around them. And at this place where she was about almost 7 months in total, she was interrogated 80 times, 80 days in a row, in a total of 1,000 hours. And all the time without any legal access. She had no lawyer, and she was completely on her own. And also the information or the access to family is very, very poor. For the first two and a half months, we don't hear anything from her except one short phone call. My family in Iran was allowed to see her about 3.5 months later when the interrogations were over. So she was completely isolated from the world. And she didn't see inside of a courtroom until her first hearing in April 28, 2021. This was almost 5 months, more than 5 months after she was arrested. And she met her lawyer for the first time at this court. So she did not have access to a lawyer until she was brought to court. And her lawyer got access to the file 4 days before the court date was. And it's not that the lawyer gets access to files and can copy them and bring them to his office. No, the lawyers in Iran have to read the cases in court in front of the security forces, and they are not allowed to take pictures or anything else. So it's very, very heavy conditions for building a defense for a political prisoner when you have no access, even not to your to the person. And that was her first court hearing. She was still in solitary confinement at this time. Her second court hearing was in June 13. That was the final court date. And there the charges were brought up by the prosecutor, and it was a very behind closed doors court, and the prisoners were not allowed to defend themselves. And a few weeks later, in August 2021, she was sentenced to 10 years and 8 months in prison for charges running an illegal group for disrupt national security, and 8 months for propaganda against the regime. My mother denies both charges. The Islamic Republic of Iran criminalized her freedom of belief, freedom of thought, and freedom of speech. That's why she is behind bars. And that's why they tried her on trumped-up charges. Her trial was a sham, conducted behind closed doors, as I said, with no real opportunity to present a defense. Nahid Tagavi, my mother, was tried in a group case. Along her 2 other women rights activists, Bahar Soleimani and Somaya Kargar, and a labor rights activist, Mehran Raouf, were sentenced to many, many years in prison. The whole Iran's judicial process is no more about justice than it's like the Middle Age inquisitions. This has nothing to do with a lawful process as we think it should be. Systematic human rights violations are commonplace in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Lawyers, journalists, religious minorities, any dissenters are arbitrarily arrested. I want to give you an example. The lawyer of my mom, who was the lawyer of the whole group case, was arrested 1 week after my mom's sentence was given because he tried to get vaccine for the Iranian people to save their lives, and therefore he's now in prison, and we have no idea what's going on with him. And this is only a small example for the whole prison system of Iran. And as I said, the group was charged with propaganda against the state. This is the official charge in the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's honestly the most frequently charged in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I want to translate you this charge. Propaganda against the state means thinking is forbidden and talking about your thoughts is a crime. The prisoner is presumed guilty before the trial. The only reason why they put them in solitary confinement is to break them, is to get fake confessions, is to get any evidence. Then they bring them to the trial, to court, then they give them harsh sentences. And the sentences are really often very harsh. For example, Nasrin Sotoudeh, a human rights lawyer, was sentenced to, I think, 86 lashes and 36 years behind bars. So lashes, flogging, isidorat, it's very commonplace in Iran to give sentences like in the Middle Age. I've learned from my mother that resistance and speaking out against this injustice is the only way to stand against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I decided to go public with her case at the very beginning of her arrest. I think it was after 6 days when she was arrested, I officially said that my mother is arrested and we have no sign of life of her. I created the Free Nahid campaign on social media. I started giving media interviews, like Raymond said, to much German media, but also to international media like The Guardian. I started working with NGOs like Amnesty International, and most important part is to building networks with other families of other political prisoners to help each other. And so it came that 2 months after her arrest, she was still in solitary confinement. imprisonment. She was under interrogation. She was isolated from the whole world. This was, as I said, 2 months after her arrest. 200 people were standing in front of the Iranian embassy in Germany and were demanding for her freedom. And when I start having phone calls with her, it was always my aim to tell her about all the efforts that are people making to secure her release and the release of the other political prisoners. So on her trial date, on her first trial date, I talked to her in the morning and I told her, be strong, go into the courtroom and imagine thousands of people surrounded with you, standing behind you and demanding free them all. So I always try to give her a lot of spirit and to give her a feeling of what is going on outside. People are caring about you. And this solidarity is so important to the prisoner. In the first, going public with the case of a political prisoner is so important because it helps the prisoner and it protects the prisoner. They cannot do what they want with them when they know the case is public. And it gives the prisoner a lot of spirit, and it's very important to always speak up against what is going on, what they are doing to the prisoner inside. And I really want to recommend to everybody to go public if they have such a case, because the prisons in Iran are full of people like my mother, Nahi Tagavi. And these people are all in jail because they cared for other people, because they were fighting for a better world, they were fighting for a free Iran, and that's why they are in jail. And they deserve awards and not bars. I want to give you an example of a very brave political prisoner called Sepide Gholian. Sepide Gholian is a journalist, and she was advocating for labor rights. And she was in the Evin prison. Evin prison is a prison for political prisoners. And for punishing her, they sent her to a normal prison, somewhere in very far away from her family, where normal prisoners were held. Very poor conditions in such prisons. And a few weeks ago, Sepide caught COVID, and she was released for medical furlough for some weeks. And the first thing Sepide does after her release, she gave a detailed report about the mistreatment and the torture from women in this prison. And it was so emotional what she told, very detailed, and how women are treated in this prison, and mistreatment and torture. Therefore, they opened her a new court case. She's now again charged with, you can guess, propaganda against the regime. Sepide knew that they are going to charge her again. She knew when she's going to publicize this mistreatment, she will get in trouble. But she decided to be the voice of the prisoners. She's so brave. And what I want to say is the prisoners are brave, they are resistant, they count on us. It is up to us to be their voice, to have their back, and to fight for their release. And I want to end up with a very famous Iranian sentence. Everybody in Iran knows this sentence. It's called "Zendaniyan siyasi azad bayad gardan," and that means free all political prisoners right now. And I want to thank Revolution Book, and I want to thank the emergency appeal to free Iran's political prisoners for having us, for being our voice. The fight will go on, but I'm very sure we are going to win this fight. Thank you very much.
Wow, talk about heroism for our times. We need a lot more of that all over the world, in this country in particular, and we need to free these courageous prisoners. And what you've been hearing today already, and what you're going to hear from Raymond, from Mariam, from Ariel Dorfman, and from the speakers you're going to hear can open people's minds, and it can change the way people feel about Iran and Iranians. It can change the way they act. But to do that on the scale that's necessary to create the kind of global political furor over the horrendous treatment of Iran's political prisoners and their tremendous inspiring courage, and to weigh in, as Raymond was saying, on the side of the struggle against repression and against this brutal, theocratic, fascistic Islamic Republic, millions and millions of people need to hear this and to learn this. And that takes money. That takes tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, ultimately millions of dollars. As Raymond was saying, the ad in the New York Review of Books, this is the actual one. They didn't print a magazine that size, I don't think. Probably reached tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people. That was a very important start. It cost $15,000 to do that. So we have to raise much, much more in order to publish this in other places. Ultimately, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Journal of Higher Education, there are many different publications that we want to aim for. So right now, I want to tell people around the world how you can donate. And this slide says it very well. If you go to our website, Free Iran's Political Prisoners Now.org. It's a mouthful, but it makes sense. Free Iran's Political Prisoners Now.org. You will see a donate button. You can go to it on your phone right now. And there are two different ways you can donate. You can fill out the online form with your credit card and put your credit card information and make a donation that way. Or you can mail checks made out to World Can't Wait to the address that you'll find there. And the advantage of being in Revolution Books right now is you can give cold hard cash, or you can write a check, or you can go on your phone. And this is a critical way to support these prisoners, to work on this campaign. And everybody here and in the audience can take part in this in one way or another by encouraging friends, families, co-workers, and so on to donate whatever they can. And I think Raymond was saying this at the beginning, that there was a tremendous effort by the Iranian diaspora to help to raise money, talking about it on Clubhouse, garage sales, other ways, to really critical in raising this $15,000 to do that. So let's free these political prisoners now. Thank you.
We are in real time and space passing the hat here at Revolution Books in Harlem. I hope and expect that's happening out there in Berkeley. And for those of you who are gathered, together in different parts of the world, do the same. We have to raise these funds, and this cause is the cause for all of humanity. So I want to introduce the next segment of the program, and it's kind of a combined segment here, because we are going to show a video that was produced in Frankfurt, Germany. And this video is the theme song for the Burn the Cage, Free the Birds campaign. And it has really had a tremendous effect, enlivening, riveting, inspiring effect on people. So this, as I said, is the theme song for the Burn the Cage, Free the Birds campaign that inspired the emergency appeal effort in the United States. So we're going to watch this video. It's about 3 minutes. And then immediately after the video, we're going to hear from the spokesperson for the Burn the Cage, Free the Birds campaign, and that is Kaveh Milani, who's going to be joining us from Germany. And Kaveh has been incredibly active and energetic in building this campaign and spreading it throughout Europe, and as I said, inspiring people in other parts of the world. And Kaveh himself was someone who grew up in Iran, and at a very young age, he had to go into hiding because of a wave of repression that came down, including among his fellow high school students at the time. And many of them were arrested and executed. As I said, Kaveh went into hiding, and he ultimately made his way to Europe, where he continued to be a politically radically conscious person, and he also pursued mathematics, which is a great love and passion in his life. And Kaveh is going to be joining us live from Germany to tell us about that campaign, and it's a wonderful way to set up to watch this video first. So the video will be followed by Kaveh Milani.
سلام. آهنگ قفس را بسوزان من تقدیم کردم به تمام زندانیان سیاسی ایران، به خصوص زنان که بخش عظیم از زندانیان تشکیل میده، و همچنان امیدوارم که یک روزی درهای زندان آمریکا هم شکسته بشه و توده وسیعی که در زندان هستن به ناحق روزی آزاد باشن، نه به زندان نه به اعدام.
قفس را بسوزان، بیا در خیابان، صداشو بلرزان، تو بنیاد زندان، نه تیر و تناب نه کشتار آسان، فقط حق انسان، فقط حق انسان. نترسید نترسید، ما همه با هم هستیم، نترسید نترسید، ما همه با هم هستیم، نترسید نترسید، ما همه با هم هستیم. نترسید نترسید، باید آنها بترسند، هستیم در کنار زندانیان دربند. بترسید بترسید ای صاحبان زندان، آمدیم در خیابان بشکنیم قفل زندان. بترسید بترسید ای صاحبان زندان، آمدیم در خیابان بشکنیم قفل زندان. بترسید بترسید، ما همه با هم هستیم، بترسید بترسید، ما همه با هم هستیم. بگو گرسنگان را از گلوله نترسان، بنیادی نظام را در خیابان بسوزان. من و تو هم صدا با صدای بی صدایان، بشکنیم از خیابان دروازه های زندان. دی اینترناسیونال سولیداریته،
Thank you, Raymond. The music is wonderful. Hello to all. Thank you to you who organize this program and invite me to see people from other side of the ocean who are supporting other people that they have never met. It's just beautiful, and that is what we all fighting for, a world with no border and nation. I will talk about what's happening in Iran now. Well, in real sense, there is struggle and resistance by the people of Iran, almost from every corner of society. And on other hand, the repression of the criminal Islamic Republic of Iran. This theocratic fascist regime has used repression, imprisonment, forced confession, torture, and execution for 40 years since they got the power. This regime has no solution to the problem of people of Iran, and now we are facing a new and heightened situation. Since uprising of 2017 and 2019, there were mass of people rose up against all odds. But on other hand, the reactionary fascist regime has no answer but the brutal intensified campaign of arrest, torture, and execution that started in mid-October of 2020. This had everything to do with smashing the struggle of the people, and particularly to prevent or minimize the possible impact of commemoration of the November uprising of 2019. So even though this regime is riddled with significant conflicts, which was apparent in their selection of this year's president, yet they are united like a fist against us. Look, everyone can be arrested in Iran because of religion, ethnicity, human rights activists, women who are fighting against the hijab, or oppression of the women, writers, poet, rapper, singer like Tumaj Salehi. You will see his video later here. Relatives of the prisoners, teachers, and even lawyers of the prisoners themselves. Yeah, both prisoners and their lawyer, they are in jail together. You may have seen the video hacked from Evin for 1 month ago about beating, treating the prisoners like animals. That is how they are treating the prisoners. You can be arrested because of who you love, even the shape of your t-shirt, your hairstyle, the color of your shoes. Any decent citizen in Iran is a potential threat to them. These hypocrites buy all kinds of tools and weapons for their war, repression, and for control of people from unholy West. But when it comes to the health of the well-being of people of Iran, buying the vaccine against COVID-19, well, forget about it, because it comes from the Great Sultan. People are suffering and dying every day because of COVID-19. Yesterday, I saw an interview on YouTube with a teenager from the south part of Iran, Khuzestan, the province in Iran that had mass protests over water shortage recently. The TV reporter asked him, why don't you use the mask? He answered, a mask? Why? I have nothing to live for. No job, nothing. My only property is this cell phone. I'm waiting to die. It doesn't matter. Look, this is the feeling of many, especially young people in Iran. The prices of base food are getting higher and higher. For many people, eating meat is just a dream now. This horrific situation has been intensified by appointing Ibrahim Raisi as president of Iran. At the age of 27, Ibrahim Raisi was the youngest member of the Death Commission, responsible for massacre of thousands of political prisoners in summer of 1988. Ibrahim Raisi, the current president of Iran, played a pivotal role in that massacre. They want to crush us. If they could, they would kill all of the political prisoners right now. We undoubtedly have differences among us in various ways, but it's necessary to strive to unite in the face of their repression. Burn the Cage campaign trying to be voice of the voiceless. We drive in Instagram and Telegram site to spread the information about the prisoners. We participate in demonstration in Europe right now. You know, Hamid Nouri, one of those responsible for the execution of the prisoners in Iran, summer 1988, sitting in trial in Sweden. And we were there, and we will be there to expose entire fascist regime in Iran. So comrades, friends, and everyone, we in Burn the Cage, Free the Birds Combine, open our arms to everyone who has a dream of a better world. Let us unite, let us come together in burning all cages holding our loved one, like Evin. Again, let us unite to burn all cages, like Guantanamo, like Abu Ghraib prison. You remember what the freedom fighter did to prisoners? We call on all human rights organizations, Center of Support for Political Prisoners, social network, political activists, and all those who want social justice and a better world to expose the crime of the Islamic Republic of Iran and reach out to the people of all countries to unite and stand in solidarity with the people of Iran in calling for the immediate and unconditional release of all political prisoners in Iran. Our message to these fascists is that enough is enough. We will not swallow your crime in silence and on our knees. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Thank you for your time that you gave me. Yeah.
And I want to give another round of applause to Mariam and Kavi. What I want to do is talk about internationalism and bringing forward another way for humanity in today's world, and what this campaign has to do with that. We've heard now from a number of speakers about the situation in Iran, what's happening in Iran, and we'll be learning more. We've heard about dissent and rebellion that has been growing, the struggle of women against the hijab and all of the enslaving conditions that are imposed on them by this hateful regime, strikes and protests against economic hardship, uprisings by ethnic and religious minorities against their oppression, artists and intellectuals who are demanding the right to express themselves and to freely think, and environmentalists who have been protesting the abuses of the ecosystems in Iran. There has been this upsurge over the last few years, and a revolutionary current has grown and gained influence within this. These are just and righteous battles, a just and righteous cause. The regime has struck back hard, killing hundreds, arresting and torturing thousands. You've heard about this. from Kaveh, from Mariam. That repression is unjust and illegitimate. This regime is unjust and illegitimate. Those who stand against this repression, those who are fighting the oppression in this society, they must be supported. And it is on us to make common cause with the people of Iran, those who are in the streets, those who are in the prisons, those whose lives, as we say in the emergency appeal, literally hang in the balance. Now, Larry talked about the history of U.S. imperialist domination over Iran. And imperialism is a worldwide system of exploitation, plunder, and oppression, with its global supply chains of sweatshops and child labor. You know, they just announced the new Apple came out, right? There is no Apple without child labor in the mines of the Congo. There is no Apple without those sweatshops in China where people are being literally worked to death. This is a system, as I said, of worldwide exploitation and oppression, and it's enforced by a genocidal military machine. You know, as we speak, you know, naval warships from the U.S. are patrolling the Persian Gulf. The U.S. has over 750 military bases in over 80 countries in the world. And they just suffered a humiliating defeat in Afghanistan, but look at the death and destruction that was wrought to that country. This is the system that confronts the people of Iran, that confronts the people of the world. And I am a follower of Bob Avakian. Bob Avakian is the architect of a whole new framework for human emancipation, the new communism. And as a follower of Bob Avakian, I am an internationalist. This bookstore is inspired by, its beating heart is the work and leadership of Bob Avakian. And here at this bookstore, the whole world comes first. The movement for revolution that we are building is one in which we are training people
Recording in progress.
to understand that American lives are not more important than other people's lives. Internationalism, the whole world, comes first. And the battle to free Iran's political prisoners is a battle to be taken up by all who yearn for a better world. We have to cross boundaries. We have to draw closer. We have to learn from the heroism of our Iranian brothers and sisters. And wherever people stand up against oppression, we have to stand with them. And this is especially important here in the belly of the beast, here in the belly of the world's greatest oppressor of humanity. We have to awaken people in this society to their responsibility, to their international responsibility, to all who resist oppression. And this battle to free these political prisoners is bound up with the struggle to emancipate humanity, all of humanity. You see, we face a particular situation in the world today. We have a situation in which there are two retrograde, reactionary, outmoded forces that are contending and clashing with each other. On the one hand, there is imperialism, U.S. imperialism in particular, that dominates the world, that brings all this suffering and exploitation that I have spoken about. On the other hand, there is reactionary, retrograde, woman-hating, religious fanaticism. This Islamic fundamentalism is what rules in Iran. And these two forces are clashing and contending with each other. And Larry, I'm wondering if you could give me my folder. Bring it up. I want to read from what Baba Vakian has said about this clash. He is saying, and this is a very powerful and incisive analysis that he's developed over the decades. He says, what we see in contention here with jihad on the one hand, that is this theocratic fundamentalism, what we see with this jihad on the one hand and McWorld McCrusade, that's Western imperialism, U.S. imperialism in particular, on the other, are historically outmoded strata among colonized and oppressed humanity up against historically outmoded ruling strata of the imperialist system. These two reactionary poles reinforce each other, even while opposing each other. If you side with one of these outmodeds, you end up strengthening both. While this is a very important formulation and is crucial to understanding much of the dynamics driving things in the world in this period, at the same time, we do have to be clear about which of these historically outmodeds has done the greater damage and poses the greatest threat to humanity. It is the historically outmoded ruling strata of the imperialist system, and in particular, the U.S. imperialists. So the point is that you have these two forces that are outmoded, and that means that they are fighting to defend and to perpetuate ways of organizing society that should long since have passed their expiration date. Cruel, exploitative, destructive of the environment. There has to be another way. And there is another way. Baba Vakian has brought forward the new communism. And this is the method and approach, the vision and the framework to make a revolution, to free humanity from all exploitation and oppression, to create a society and world in which human beings could truly flourish, and we can protect the environment for current and future generations. And it is an inspiring fact that in Iran, there is a force, the Communist Party of Iran, Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, which is taking up and applying this new communism under extremely repressive conditions. And it is inspiring that there is now a force that is emerging in Afghanistan, having studied the new communism, having been inspired by the example of the Communist Party of Iran, Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, that has now declared itself to be fighting for this new communism in Afghanistan. And this is called the Movement for the New Communism in Afghanistan. And you can go to the back of the room and get these materials to understand, the emergence of this force for all the way revolution, for all the way emancipation, in this part of the world. And this too is truly inspiring. I spoke of bringing forward another way. Well, the RevComs in the US are organizing a movement for revolution to bring forward the way of communist revolution, the total and complete emancipation of humanity, right here in the belly of the beast, at a time when the conditions are ripening for revolution in a way that's not normally the case in the imperialist countries. This is a rare time. And I would encourage people, I believe everyone received a copy when they came in, to take a look at a declaration and call to get organized now for a real revolution. So I want to bring together some of these points. The struggle to free Iran's political prisoners, the struggle to free those prisoners and to oppose this brutal regime on the one hand and U.S. imperialist threats on the other. This is a crucial battlefront right now for all who stand for justice. And this struggle, it opens up new vistas so that people will not be trapped by one or the other of these two outmotives, imperialism or this theocratic, reactionary, fanatical fundamentalisms. So it opens up new vistas because people are taking this up in the spirit of opposing both this regime and imperialism. And at the same time, this battle taking place at this time in the world can powerfully contribute to opening up more favorable conditions to make the revolution that humanity needs, to put an end to all forms of exploitation and oppression, so that these two outmotives will be put in the dustbin of history where they belong. The revolution to emancipate all of humanity in Iran and around the world. This is what is being built, and this is what must be fought for. And this is a battle, the battle to free these political prisoners in Iran, that stands as a call for all who stand for justice to come forward to support. And at the same time is a battle that can and must be linked to the battle for a whole new world for all of humanity. And that's what we as the revolutionaries involved in this campaign are doing. And this is a campaign of enormous breadth, of enormous reach, but we have to take it further. We have to sound the cry and sing the song to free all of Iran's political prisoners. They are truly heroes for our time. Thank you. Now, what we're going to do is go right to the video. We're going to hear from and see Tumaj Salahi. Oh, Tumaj Salahi. This is a 26-year-old dissident rapper in Iran, and he put out these two videos, and this was quite recently. And he paid a price for it. He was arrested. The spirit of defiance is what comes through here. and we want to share this cultural expression of the resistance and the spirit of the Iranian people.
اگه دیدی درد مردم و ولی چشاتو بستی، ظلم به مظلوم رو دیدی و از کنارش رفتی، اگه از ترس یا واسه منفعتت خوده کردی، تو هم دست ظالم هستی، تو هم مجرم هستی. اگه خودتو به خواب زدی وقتی که خونا رو میریختن، گرفتار کسبتی وقتی جون جوونا رو میگیرن، اگه وسط بازی وسط بودی و گفتی سیاست چی هست، بدون رأی سفید نداریم بی‌طرف نداره این جنگ، اگه دست رو چشمات گذاشتی دستات خونیان، خائنی اگه تریبون داری و حرفات بو میدن، دوری از وطن و دوربینای ما کمسو نیستن، یادت باشه کثافتای پشت ابر لو میرن، اگه سرپوش گذاشتی رو قتل تو هم قاتلی، واسه پوشوندن جنایت باید رو خون راه بری، بدون مال کشیدن تو این سیستم کامل نیست، ایران انقدر زندان داره که همتون جا بشین. ژورنالیست بازاری، مخبر دوزاری، هنرمند درباری، سوراخ موش بخر، مأمور معذور، از بالا دستور، جلاد مجبور، سوراخ موش بخر، سوپاپ اطمینان، منصوب بی اختیار، اصلاح طلب حزب با سوراخ موش بخر، صادراتی نایی یا کی زیرو رو کشار جایی بده هرچی دلار داری، سوراخ موش بخر. چه هنرمندی که خبر از نونبری نداری، شاشیدم به اسکارت اگه مردمی نباشی، پاره میکنم کلافتو که دیگه چرن نبافی، چه شهاب دولتی باشی چه اسقر فرهادی، چه بازیکن حکومتی و چفی الیسی، چه بازیگر صادراتی و اله هیکسی، شما خود فروش پولی نرزه مقام فیکسین، حیف زالو جیر خورا شما از خلایق نیستین، لاشی کارون با آب معدنی که پر نمیشه، خوزستان ژتون نمیخواد صاحب کل میزه، آزادی گرونه باشه آزاده کشته میده، یادتون باشه خون فقط با خون شسته میشه، تیر بزن از پشت سر بکش تشنه‌ها رو، به قتل حق خواه نامسلح افتخار کن، بیرون مرز به جنایت بزن رنگ و لعاب رو، بگیر از من مژده فردا و تقاص رو. ژورنالیست بازاری، مخبر دوزاری، هنرمند درباری، سوراخ موش بخر، مأمور معذور، از بالا دستور، جلاد مجبور، سوراخ موش بخر، سوپاپ اطمینان، منصوب بی اختیار، اصلاح طلب حزب با سوراخ موش بخر، صادراتی نایی یا کی زیرو رو کشار جایی بده هرچی دلار داری، سوراخ موش بخر. منتظر ناجی نباش خبری تو راه نیست، نجات دهنده خودتی، خودت قهرمانی، من و تو اگه ما بشیم بیکرانیم، ما منجی زمانیم، امام زمانیم. دست تو طالب ببینم قرار مچ مجاهدتو بگیرم، زجه مظلوم افغان بلند بود انقدر که منم از ایران شنیدم، رو کن دست تو طالب، رو کن از جنایت تو کشورت خون شد، برادر کشی، خواهر دزدی، گرفتی از افغان ها نورو، به اسم دین صد حرام کردی، پایه های وطن رو خراب کردی، یک نفس فرصت درست کشور تو مست قدرت خلاف رفتی، بیست برادر افغان بیست، شرافتت رو از طلاب بگیر، سپر ملت بی پناه شو، تحقیر نشو، آزاد بمیر، جهان روبروی تو ایستاده، تو تنهایی توی این جاده، سکوت نکن، به جنگ نترس، به ننگ نمون، شهید شو آزاده، طالب نوچه ی حکومت منه، طالب تاریک شروع شب، فریب تبلیغش رو نخور، تجاوز سلامش دروغ تهش، متحد شو افغانستان، متحد شو برادر ایران، متحد شو افغانستان، متحد شو ملت دل ایران، متحد شو افغانستان، متحد شو برادر ایران، متحد شو افغانستان، متحد شو ملت دل ایران، به ننگ نمون، به نام بمیر.
And our next speaker is Anahita. She's here. Anahita is a former political prisoner in Iran. In the 1980s, she spent 8 years in prison, often in solitary confinement. Several years ago, Anahita came here and did a presentation that was very enlightening. So she's going to talk with us tonight about her experience and about the campaign to free all Iran's political prisoners. This is Anahita.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate for your support, Iranian struggle, Iranian prisoners. And thank you for your invitation. As Raymond said, yeah, my name is Anahita Rahmani. I was arrested 1982 with my husband, Behruz Fathi. He was murdered under the torture. I was in jail for 8 years. So I was 1 year I was in solitary confinement. In 1988, 5,000 political prisoners were killed only during 2 months by hanging, were killed by hanging. Actually, Ayatollah Khomeini ordered this massacre, and a committee, is a death committee, carried out this murder, and the death committee was responsible for this genocide. I was in solitary confinement at that moment. I was waiting for being executed. Every night the guard used to come to my cell and tell me, Anahita, tonight is the last night for you. And Ibrahim Raisi was one of the members of the death committee. He went to visit Ayatollah Montazeri to convince him to kill 200 another prisoner. I was one of them. But Montazeri said no. That's why I am here tonight. Now, after this massacre, they lashed the women's, communist women's, so they lashed women because they want to force them to pray every day. When they said azan, it's a call to pray. They lashed us 5 times a day, each time 5 times, so it would be 25 lash every day to pray. But we continue to resistance, we continue to refuse pray, and actually, internationally, the IRR was under the pressure because so many struggle and was forced regime to stop this kind of pressure. Then they started to release the other prisoners. I was released after 8 years in 1990. Now, but Ibrahim Raisi is now a president in Iran. What does it mean for us? It means more torture, more prisoners, more execution. So we should say no, and we should be against the regime and raise our voice. So we have to say, to join to this campaign and try to have a big sound all around the world internationally for political prisoners in Iran. So now we have, we shouldn't let happen it again. And we join me to this campaign for free political prisoners now. Thank you for this invitation.
American who have lived in US since 1966. I'm a retired professor and live in Madison, Wisconsin. I work as volunteer in human rights organization and serve as coordinator of Amnesty Local Group 139 in Wisconsin. Last week, I watched the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly that was held in New York City. I watched a pre-recorded message from Mr. Raisi, President of the Islamic Republic of Iran, who addressed the General Assembly on September 21st. Raisi said Iran is the land of freedom. He stressed that his administration is based on justice, freedom of religion, morality, and independence. And Iran has the most progressive election system in West of Asia. Triggered by Raisi's speech and his reference to Iran is land of freedom, it's worth noting that since establishment of Islamic Republic of Iran by Khomeini in 1980, thousands of Iranians, including myself, had to leave our beloved country because of fear of being arrested, tortured, and raped under the new Islamic regime. In 1980, Khomeini issued an order that any prisoner who is still hold to his or her political beliefs should be executed. He appointed 4 men, including the current president of Iran, to what later became known as the Death Committee to organize and implement his order. As a member of this committee, Raisi implemented the execution of more than 5,000 political prisoners across Iran in 1988. In 2017, the present supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, defended the 1988 execution and supported Raisi, stating that those who were killed were terrorists. In July 2021, Professor Rahman, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights of Iran, called for an inquiry into the 1988 state-ordered mass execution and the role President Raisi played in those executions. Sadly, execution of innocent people, including minors, and detention of people of Baha'i faiths, Kurds, Baluch, Arab minorities, and political activists have been continued under Raisi leadership. Prosecution of attorney Nasrin Sotoudeh is an example of this nightmare of detention. Her sentence is one of the longest that has been handed down for a human rights defender in Iran. The policy of the current Iranian government is to silence peaceful demonstrators. The arbitrary detention of people, the harassment of their family members, and the transfer of the prisoners to remote locations are part of this policy. According to Amnesty International, there are many arbitrary arrests of human rights activists, in particular women, ethnic and religious minorities. A number of dual nationals are being held in political ward of notorious Evin prison in Tehran. For over 5 years, Nasrin Radcliffe, a UK charity worker, has been separated from her family and from her 7-year-old daughter. Amnesty International believes there are no transparency in Iran justice system. Many human rights violations go unreported due to widespread fear of punishment, harassment, and intimidation by security officers. Leaked video from Evin prison offers evidence of beatings, sexual harassment, and other ill treatment by prison officials without any fear of consequences or accountability. Security forces violate human rights of prisoners. Lack of investigation constitutes in and of itself a violation of the basic human rights as outlined by the UN Declaration of Human Rights that was adopted in December 10, 1948. Amnesty International has serious concern regarding gross human rights violation and abuses by the Islamic Republic of Iran, as stated by the UN Special Rapporteur on Iran. All political prisoners, including people of Baha'i faith, Kurd, Baluch, and people of Arab descent, and detained dual citizens should be released immediately and unconditionally. Thank you for your attention.
Let's go. One of the things in your packet is 5 ways you can join the struggle now to free Iran's political prisoners now. And this is very important. Each of these 5 things are things that you can easily do that make a real difference. This is, Raymond gave us kind of a history of this, the campaign starting with Dolly and Carol in December, and then the emergency appeal being written and going forward. And throughout this process, different individuals were doing different things. The first thing you can do is go to the website, Free Iran's Political Prisoners Now, and here's the sheet that's in your packet to take a look at, and sign the emergency appeal. That's what has been published in the New York Review of Books. And the emergency appeal has real content. There's real meaning to it. Signing it, you know, it's planning an important poll, as we've been talking about here today, that this is an emergency. These prisoners have to be freed now. Their arrests are illegitimate, and we're not siding with either of these reactionary forces. You can get other people to sign it. You can download images of it, like you see here, 8.5 by 11 image, or there's some back in the back that are printed out, and hand them out, circulate them. Okay, I'm being given the same 5 ways, but in a much, you know, more dramatic form. So that's one thing. Donations, 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 donations. So as we said before, raising money is a critical thing. People can still donate here at Revolution Books. If you're listening around the world, you can go on our website and hit the donate button and either donate by credit card or write a check and mail it to World Can't Wait. It's all explained there. You should keep up with a campaign through the website, Free Iran's Political Prisoners Now. Send in news tips, comments. Like we've learned a lot of news from Kaveh and Mariam about acts of heroism that are taking place right now that we need to spread and share. You can follow us on social media at Iran Prison Emerge, especially on Twitter, where we're the most active. And a lot of the tweets get, many repeats, many retweets and shares, and repeat too is a good thing to do. Again, you see people from countries around the world, journalists, human rights activists, people in Iran, people in the diaspora, circulating these. You can, there'll be planned Twitter storms that you can take place. You can volunteer. Raymond talked about the technical side of things for Revolution Books and also for our campaign to help on the social media front, to help on the website, to help do outreach, raise funds. There's all kinds of things people can do and learn how to do. We'll work with you. You're not, maybe you've done this for years. People in Toronto organized a clubhouse meeting and there's a lot of this going on in Iran now, discussing a lot of issues. Hundreds of people on some of these clubhouses, some of which discuss this campaign. They did a garage sale. They raised thousands of dollars. Anahita was part of that. Anahita didn't say this, but she got 10 at least former political prisoners to sign the emergency appeal. This was a huge thing. And Anahita traveled here in the U.S. and raised funds from other Iranians she knew. Again, it made a huge impact. Others, if you're brand new, will help. We'll work with you so you can learn how to do this kind of thing. And finally, we need help in translation, especially English to Farsi, Farsi to English. But this is a very important thing that's happening with the campaign, is this emergency appeal is being translated into other languages. It's on the website now, and I believe French and Spanish and Farsi and English. It's being translated into Turkish, Italian, Kurdish, and German. So this is a very important development to spread this campaign internationally, and we want to be able to do more of this. And of course, this flyer with this is something you can give to others, and they can do.
So we're going to call to the stage Deborah Sweet, who's going to read a solidarity message to you, and she'll explain that.
The campaign has received solidarity messages for today's program and for the protest at the United Nations that are posted on the campaign's website and are available at revolutionbooksnyc.org. The messages have come from Carol Downer, a co-initiator of the campaign who is a longtime reproductive rights activist. Shahrzad, Elika, and Aryana Shuri, whose father, Anousheh Ashuri, has been imprisoned for 4 years in Iran. Mersadeh Ghaedi, a former political prisoner. Reza Qureshi, a professor at Stockton College, along with messages from Iranian human rights, ethnic rights, women's rights, and political organizations. I am going to read excerpts from a solidarity message sent to today's program from Mansourah Barkish. 6 of her close relatives, 4 brothers, a sister, and a brother-in-law were executed by the Islamic Republic of Iran in the 1980s. She herself was imprisoned and remains defiant. Mansourah has helped organize groups for justice for family members murdered or disappeared by the Iranian regime. I am one of the relatives and mothers of Haravan plaintiffs. My two dear brothers, Mahmoud and Muhammad Ali Bekish, were also amongst the executed. They spent 5 years of their sentences in prison for the crime of defending the people and their beliefs in courts that have not a shred of respect for justice. The bodies of these loved ones were thrown into mass graves in Havaran and other unmarked and unnamed graves all over Iran. How did they kill our loved ones, and where are they buried? Since then, they have bulldozed Caravan and other unnamed mass graves several times in order to whitewash any evidence of their crimes. We are demanding that the United Nations and the UN Human Rights Organization members not close their eyes to the previous and current crimes of the Islamic regime of Iran that are still being committed in and outside the prison walls of Iran. I call on all free-minded people of the world to raise their voices of protest around the world and to question their own governments as well. Every day in Iran, there are protest strikes and large gatherings. I am sure that it will not be long before the social movement of activists who are fed up and currently protesting and striking in different cities of Iran with unity and solidarity will free all political prisoners and send these criminals where they deserve. Undoubtedly, the United States and other dominating countries have only their own interests at stake, and I strongly oppose sanctions against Iran and other countries. But I urge the United Nations and UN member states to not turn a blind eye to systematic human rights and abuses and other crimes of this oppressive regime that is tantamount to crimes against humanity. Metzrech Bekish.
Hello, this is Darius Adafat Peckham. I'm here today in solidarity with those political prisoners of Iran who are imprisoned illegitimately and those who call for their freedom. While I can't pretend to understand their suffering and that of their families, I hope this poem serves as a memorial of sorts for those who have died and a reaching out to those who are living. This poem is called Here's a Love Poem to Naveed the Wrestler. Here's a love poem to Naveed the Wrestler. After the imposed double execution of professional wrestler Naveed Afkari for peacefully protesting the Iranian government in 2018. I died twice. Once just to get there, to walk down dream-colored streets once belonging to my grandmother, to her home. Once to lay myself down, head submerged in the Caspian, receive 74 new veins across my legs as they tickle tulips at the foot of the Alborz. Sigh to bleed a garden. I die with reassurance, the eyes of my American parents boring into their American son. They aren't kind to our citizens there. So I grow out my beard just once and grow my legs strong for carrying, the roots of myself unfurled, steady for the bell. I roll my R's, growl Persian in the bubble of my throat. I wrap my new legs around Nina and her illness, Grandma and her fall. I prick Naveed's neck with my lashes, carry them all to my wellspring beneath the Alborz. Drown them. Become too connected to the earth not to care for the others. I lie cold in my cell, and as I fall into sleep, remind myself that to die in one country I must do so in the next. Thank you.
I want to thank all of our speakers, both in person here, in person through the live stream in Germany. I want to thank those speakers, and I want the audience to acknowledge the contribution that those speakers made to raising our understanding of the situation confronting Iran's political prisoners and the call to release these prisoners now. So I'd like to give all the speakers a round of applause. I want to thank you, the audience, for coming out and for bringing your energy, to this room and to this whole event today. And this was truly an international event, both who was watching and the whole spirit of coming together to stand as one with Iranian political prisoners. I want to give a shout out to the staff of Revolution Books here in Harlem and in Berkeley. This was an undertaking, to put it mildly. But it was ambitious, as it had to be, and I believe we are fulfilling our ambition by pulling this program off with the verve and with the determination that we have. I want to also give a shout out to the staff of the International Emergency Campaign. They are pulling this effort together, and this is something that is truly, truly extraordinary. And it came to a certain high point with the publication in the New York Review of Books of the statement and appeal, but that is only a point of departure. Go further and to go higher, and we do have to spread the word of this campaign, involve more people in it, and it has to be in the atmosphere in a whole different way. And I think what we learned today and the energy we got from the speakers and the 5 things that you can do, all of this is actionable. As I said, this is not a symbolic campaign. This is a determined effort to truly free these political prisoners. And I want to invite people here in New York who are in the room, and people who are watching this, and people who have heard about this. I want to invite people to become part of the life of Revolution Books, because we have a program like this, and I think you begin to appreciate, what this bookstore represents, and we want to do more. And I want to announce that come Wednesday night here at Revolution Books, we have a very special event. Cornel West, scholar activist, will be coming to present the 60th anniversary edition of Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth, and he'll be in a dialogue with Revolution Books spokesperson Andy Z, who also is a host